Oops. Okay, so it is 4 o'clock. So I am going to begin with intros. So Ani, everyone, thank you for joining us today in this virtual space. We would like to begin this event first with a couple of land acknowledgements. First, we'll start off with Algonquin College. Algonquin College is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin people, also known as Anishinaabe. The Algonquin people are the original inhabitants along the, or in the area along the Ottawa River. So as a common practice amongst many Indigenous cultures, it is appropriate for us to acknowledge the hospitality of our hosts when entering their territory. So with that in mind, Algonquin College would like to respectfully give thanks to the Algonquin people for hosting them on their ancestral lands. Additionally, the IM4 Lab is housed in Emily Carr University in Vancouver, which is situated on the ancestral unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So we at the lab would like to give thanks to all three nations that we can carry on our work here at the lab on their traditional territories. So just briefly, IM4 is an Indigenous-led media lab created and founded by Indigenous filmmaker Loretta Todd, alongside media matriarchs Tracey Bonneau, Doreen Manuel, and C. Swice. So at the lab, we offer training opportunities along with production opportunities for Indigenous peoples in XR, extended reality, which encompasses virtual reality, augmented reality, and 360 video, with a mission to support and build an indigenized tech ecosystem. And I'll just very quickly introduce myself. Ani Bojo, Alana Mendaman Shwanda Dejnakas, Anishinaabe Dao, Denishinaabe Noizin Shawnonquet, Wakwamacong, Ontario, Dunjiba. Hi, my name is Alana Mendaman Shwanda. I am from Wakwamacong First Nation in Ontario, Manitoulin Island. My Anishinaabe name is Southern Cloud, and I'm a part of the team here at IM4 on the West Coast. Yeah, so glad to be invited and to partake in this event and have our media matriarch Tracey here to present. So with that, I also want to note that you can post any questions in the chat box. We'll be collecting them that we can bring up later towards the end that Tracey can answer. So without further ado, I will steer this to Tracey so she can introduce herself and present what she has for us today. Just the mute.
Okay. Are you able to see the PowerPoint on the screen? Okay, great. So why Haskell Halt is squeezed suma hat Kentils and Pinkton Tiken mut I chit asula. So my name is Tracey Bonneau, And you'll see on the screen my Syilx name is Sumachatk, and that means that that name was given to me by my great grandfather, who is from the Columbia, and so it's a water name, and so my name is a water name, and the majority of women in my family have water names. I'm nervous today because I've only come into VR since 2018. So I'm a baby and I'm a new learner, but I do have lots of experience in terms of storytelling. Before we continue, I think it's important to say that where I'm speaking from is in the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Syilx people, and where I'm located is in the Sukanakench in the Okanagan in Penticton, British Columbia, on the Penticton Indian Reserve. So just a little bit about me to sort of set the context for the conversation that I'd like to inspire, and sort of the dialogue that I'm hoping to come out of this. So I've always been fascinated with technology. Technology from a very young age has always been something that I gravitated towards. And this is quite strange because, I grew up in the 60s, in the late 60s, and the environment that I grew up in was a rural environment. We didn't have electricity until I was about 15 years of age. And so there was a lot of things that we did creatively within where I was brought up on my reserve. And so I think that really contributed to my career and my life and my passion as a storyteller. And I'm just going to go to the next slide. Oops. Okay. So in this slide, what you'll see is my AR project that was recently exhibited in Oaxaca, Mexico. And what this is a huckleberry bush. And so there was a number of us artists within the IM4 Lab that developed projects that were, there was a couple of reasons we developed them. Was to learn how to create AR. And the first round was working with Unity and Tilt Brush. And then the second round here was working, we helped create an experience through Spark with the Vancouver Mural Festival. And the idea was to introduce individuals into the experience of AR using cell phones for accessibility, so that Indigenous community would begin to understand, what is this conversation about AR? What is AR? What is VR? And what is this world really about? Because when I started in 2018, I really didn't think that it was something that was presented to me and a discussion, but I was like, okay, I will take a look at this. This is super exciting, but this is probably something that I think my daughter or my nieces, some of the younger generation, would gravitate towards. This is not something that would be applicable to me. I soon found out very fast that that was absolutely not the case. In the middle picture, you will see this is part of a food sovereignty conference that we held in Penticton. And so we gathered a group of knowledge keepers in a teepee that we had been gifted to us within the Okanagan territory. So we constructed the teepee, And we're literally inside this teepee, and we have this fire, and we have a circle, and we're talking about the different ways that we are protecting and preserving and celebrating our Indigenous food. And I selected this image because this image, to me, really speaks to the possibilities when I started to embark in the world of VR and thinking about, well, how somebody like me that is in my mid 50s, how could I engage with VR? What do I have to offer? This is something that, again, as I said before, that should be for young people, and this is something that is it's not something that I could really do. You'll see in the third picture, you see me with my VR headset on, and what I'm doing in this picture, and this is actually a month ago at Emily Carr University. And what I'm doing is I'm logging my footage. I was able to go out this summer and learn how to film with this amazing camera called the Titan. And so the Titan for me was an absolute, it was like picking up a tape recorder in the 1970s and playing it back and going, wow, I hear my voice. This is incredible. There's so many things I could do with that. That's literally what happened to me when I was very young. Or the first time that I picked up a video camera and we created a scene and we turned the camera on and then turned the camera off and would create these magical movies where I would disappear on the screen. And that's called really old school in-camera editing. For me, learning how to use a new camera and thinking about a new medium in terms of developing a documentary with a camera that literally has 8 lenses and a round head, the possibilities absolutely excited me because I'm an artist first and foremost. And what I want to say to the rest of the artists in the room is that the life of an artist is very, for me, is very meaningful, but it's also very frustrating because I find that as an artist, I'm constantly looking at ways and methods and means to articulate what it is inside me, what story I have to tell and why I have to tell them. That brings me to my career. My career over the past 35 years, I'm what you consider a factual storyteller. So I've primarily worked in documentary. And I worked in documentary because I live in a rural community, because the things that were around me didn't make sense. And I found that discovering documentary and taking a program in the early 80s, I was able to figure out ways to explore my creativity, but also have an impact on my community. And you'll see up at the top there, the title Ancestral Pathways into the World of VR, AR, and XR. I say ancestral pathways because if you look at the huckleberry bush, it looks very, it looks very vibrant in the application, and it looks, the berries, you know, seem very, almost like if you found them in space. It's just very surreal. But the huckleberry itself, if you look at the second image, the huckleberry is something that is extremely important to me as a seal woman. It's extremely important to me because I'm a berry picker. And because this food, this sacred food that you see here, has kept my people alive for thousands of years here in the interior in the Okanagan. And so when I was presented with the possibility as a matriarch to embark in the world of VR, it became really exciting for me to think, wow, there is a place for me within this world, within this amazing technology and innovation. I do have a story to tell, and I want to explore those possibilities. Okay, so the next slide is about the IM4 Lab. Before I stop sharing screen, I am a matriarch and matriarch with the IM4 Lab. And the IM4 Lab, as Alana has said earlier in the introduction, is a concept and a vision of Loretta Sarah Todd. And Loretta is a visionary. Loretta has created many programs that have built capacity for communities for many, many years. And so the idea of the matriarchs is that the matriarchs would be allowing to bring into the idea of accessibility to community, because VR is very expensive. The technology can be cumbersome in terms of access and use for community. And so the vision of the AR IM4 Lab was to create access for communities and provide free workshops and equipment so that the possibilities of people just learning what VR is and fostering an interest in that would further their artistic goals as artists. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Alana is going to share a little bit about IM4.
Okay. Let me know how the volume is.
IM4 is a way for us to help people understand and experience this beautiful way of seeing the world, seeing our world.
So when I envisioned the IM4 Lab, it was envisioned as inclusive. Everybody has a chance to see what meaning they can make of it in their lives and in their own communities' lives. Right now, it's Indigenous space. It's a space that we feel safe. And we did that by making sure we had a program that would provide enough food and place and equipment.
You're able to create anything within this realm. You're able to make people feel so many different things.
So the reason why I'm really interested in teaching web VR is because since this pandemic, people don't have the same access to technological tools as they used to, and VR headsets are often not readily accessible for folks. So instead came up with this workshop where the tools are much more accessible because all you need is a computer and a web browser in order to create a simple web VR environment. And then for the workshop with the music video making one, we made some 360 music videos. So we learned how to put sound into like a 360 skybox. We also used screen recording to build a quick VR environment in web VR, and then recorded that and then brought it into DaVinci Resolve to cut and edit to the music of their choice.
The web VR platform allows us to create music and mixes in a format that our ears actually perceive sound, which is what we call binaural.
This was a pretty easy way to like build environments in virtual reality, which I thought was super, super cool.
A lot was very new, and at points it was very confusing, but having the mentors there to just kind of share screen and walk you through it was incredibly clarifying.
Our traditional knowledge keepers within, our field knowledge system remind us that everything we use and everything in everyday life is from the Tanith, is from all living things, which includes cell phones, technology. And we're also guided by the principles that all living things have a spirit and an energy, because we know that because it's in our language. We also know that we're acutely respectful and mindful of all living things and the concept of sustainability and reciprocity.
So what's my relationship to this tool, mined from the ground? And then what is that non-human interaction with it? My dream is that I can get closer to understanding how we can repair those relationships.
We've been in the future, in the past, in the present, all of our existence, and all of our teachings from wherever we come from really exemplify that. And I think that's the beauty of bringing something like this opportunity, the IM4, into existence at this time, where we're finally at the starting line with everybody else.
Okay. Would you like me to share the website as well, or is that good?
Sure, if you just want to show the front page of the website, and then I can get prepared for my screen. So this is our website, and if you go to there, we do have workshops that are online. So that's the part I wanted to show you. We're not going to play them, but if you want to go in and see some of our talks, you're able to see all of the recorded sessions that we have had with over the past year and a half and 2 years. So have fun with it. Be in touch with us. We really want to support the vision of Loretta and the vision of inclusivity for communities. Yeah. And these are the matriarchs. So that was, oh, that's okay. I'll move to my, there we go. Can you see my screen?
Oh, it's just loading right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. What was it? Okay. Okay. So one of the things that I thought was really important that I could share with you is that I can only share what I know as an artist, as a seal artist. And we know as all communities are distinct and unique across Canada for Indigenous communities, that we don't speak for one another, that we we can only speak for ourselves and our community. So I just really wanted to make sure that that was understood in a really gentle and good way. From what I know, the exciting things that are happening in our communities is that as contemporary seal artists, we're developing modern, culturally relevant, ethically responsible models and systems. And most of them have, from what I've seen, been about restoring language, culture, and community. When we look at the image on of the huckleberry bush, and I've placed it on the one of the poles at the institution that I work at, called the Algonquin Center, and that pole is the berry pole, and one of our 4 food chiefs is Chief Sia. And so I placed I placed the image on that pole just to have the discussion about some of the ways that we're taking our chaptik, which is our oral stories, as modern storytellers, and developing them into these really amazing, unique projects. You'll see on the right-hand side a local artist, and he's a visual artist, and his name is Sheldon Lewis. And so Sheldon was pitching for a mural project within the Okanagan here. And so he came up with this rendition and this idea, what would it look like? What would it look like if this mural was on the side of a building? And I asked permission from Sheldon if I could use this image as part of my talk and presentation. So if you look at that, what are the possibilities if we were to create assets that were more indicative of who we are in terms of the AR, VR world? So if those assets looked like this little child, or this man that's digging roots, because currently when I went on many VR websites, assets were something that oh, I'm not on the camera. Assets were something that I saw was really lacking in the VR world. And so what are the possibilities about language learning in Indigenous communities? With my particular project, what's important to me with this experience of first of all, learning AR was, if we were to pick a berry and we take one berry from here and we were to be immersed into a whole nother world, that would teach language, that would journey up into the mountain and bring you right to the mountain, the actual mountain, in a 360 environment of those high mountains where the huckleberries are found. What are those possibilities? So in looking at the image of Sheldon's work is beautiful. It's very vibrant, and the idea of his work is really centered around a lot of healing. A lot of his work is very positive in the messages and very strong. And so the other possibility that I realized with VR in my research when I was learning about this was that VR has huge potential for our communities in terms of healing trauma, because there are tools within VR that can be utilized that would be culturally safe and culturally appropriate, that could be utilized within our communities, going into the future. And so those are some of the possibilities that I thought about when I was looking at, what are some of the practical things that I know from the work that I'm doing as a documentary factual storyteller. Like, what kind of experiences could we use to engage in healing, to engage in story, to engage in culturally safe models that are really relevant to our communities. Now, the last component of this presentation is that poll. And so within our Seal culture, we have 4 food chiefs that stand our ways up in terms of governance and who we are. And those polls really define the polarities of different ways that we think in our communities, and the ways that we can work together as a community, so the community is safe. And the whole idea of creating a model of safety is really, I think, is really exciting, because I do live in a community that is impacted by many, many things that we don't like to talk about. So what are the possibilities, or maybe it is talked about, what are the possibilities and what are the creative ways that we can work within that to inspire others? Okay. And some of those ways, as I talked about before, is reclaiming our knowledge of the people and of the land. In this first image on the left, you will see anytime I do a project, I always bring a young person with me. I'm always wanting to make sure that, although I have this amazing opportunity and I was able to write this grant or get this project, that I bring a community member, a family member, a young person that's interested in technology, and bring them along for the journey. That's part of the transmission of knowledge that I embark on in terms of factual storytelling and VR truth telling. That's Serenity, and that's the Titan. That's the amazing camera that I was speaking of earlier, and you'll see the lenses, and it's quite an interesting story when we bring this camera out, because we'll have people walking up to us saying, what is that? And the other exciting aspect that I found in terms of filming this summer was with digital camera, your focus is just straight ahead. And so you can get away with people walking around behind, and you can have crew members, quiet on the set or rushing them away. That's not the case with shooting with the 360 camera, and particularly a really expensive camera like this, because you literally can see 360 all around. So I found that really fun in terms of learning the challenges as a director, and also thinking about how do I shift my thinking from flat into everything around me, and how's that going to play in the story? Where am I going to place myself? Where am I going to place the story, and what's important to me in the central point? So that's Olivier. Olivier is one of my mentors, and it was absolutely phenomenal to work with him this summer. I have the image of Skimheast, which is one of our food chiefs. And I have Skimheast in here because of the Huckleberry Project, knowing that when I'm producing this project, which is AR, VR, 360, and all of it, I have to remember that in our world, the world of the Huckleberry is inclusive of the entire ecology. So in order for the Huckleberry to survive, everything else around it has to survive. And so thinking about the layers of that, one of the really important chiefs is Chief Skimheast Black Bear. And Black Bear is really part of the Huckleberry story. So I'm not just going to be focusing on the Huckleberry itself, but the entire ecology of this message and this story that I need to tell. You'll see in this other image, my mom and my daughter, and they're up in the mountains picking huckleberries. What's also important to me is the transmission of knowledge, which I spoke about earlier. That transmission of knowledge, being able to share this new technology and bring individuals along is really, really important to me. It may not be the way that everyone goes, but I know for myself, the opportunities that I have received is greatly because other Indigenous filmmakers were so willing to share, because they're so, back in the early 80s, there was so little of us. There was a handful of us. It was a good handful, but as the years went by and capacity built, those storytellers and those filmmakers were bringing other filmmakers on board. In the last image on the bottom is one of my mentors, and I'm just going to move this here. And that is Caroline Running Wolf. And I wanted to mention Caroline because Caroline worked with the Hawaiians, and she helped develop an app for language revitalization. And it is really extremely creative. And so part of my grant in terms of the project that I'm working on right now is to learn from Caroline and to learn from another Indigenous expert. And so that was all possible because of the resources of the IM4 Lab and the equipment. We're at Emily Carr there. And in this particular session, I'm looking over my, my footage. Okay. So this part of the topic is I think is really, really important for us to talk about. And the topic of the discussion is truth-telling. And I briefly want to touch on truth-telling because of my experience and what I've heard from other artists and other storytellers and creating work. So again, in the bottom image here, you'll see Scumheast. That's the black bear. It's the actual carving. And then see down in the very bottom, I'm circling, and then it's a little red dot there. What that is that that's actually an addition to an add-on to my huckleberry bush, which is the monarch butterfly. And so as you're viewing the huckleberry bush, you can, you can view on top of it, you can go inside of it, and you can see the berries really big, you can pull it out and make the bush really small. This monarch butterfly is flying around. And the reason I chose the monarch butterfly is because it's an endangered species. It's an endangered insect in the South Okanagan, and we are trying to protect it. So the monarch butterfly, it has a relationship to the milkweed, which we've planted in our territory. And so that is another way that I'm expanding the story and beginning to unravel a story. So for example, you could pick one of these berries and you could learn all about the monarch butterfly and how it flies down to Mexico and how it comes back, and how it's critically important for the butterfly because it's a pollinator, and the pollinator is about food. And so it's a really small, beautiful creature. But if we lose the butterfly, the repercussions are very, very, very large in terms of one thing missing. You'll see in the image here, my daughter, she's digging roots, and you'll see another young person out there learning. So our culture is our sovereignty. And what I mean by that is that everything that we do as Seal people is out on the land. And how we know that is through our language. So if we understand the language, then it will help us also understand our relationship to the land, because the Seal language was given to us from the land. And so the idea that we have a responsibility as artists in terms of what we're representing. And I will get into further conversation in the next slide about some of the things to think about as artists. Before I get into ethics and protocols, I want to talk about VR Indigenous IMs, because I think it's really important. And I say isms because you'll see in the slide that is to my right that I'm circling, that is a circle. And if you think about this in an immersive environment, and you look at in the very center of the circle, you see all of these cultural people, my family members, and what they're doing is they're extending knowledge to one of the most important people in that circle, which is that young person. And that young person has the ability to take the knowledge and transcend it possibly another 80 years past these individuals in the photo. And so when I say what is in VR Indigenous ism, I'm saying we talk about futurism, and I absolutely love the idea of futurism. What is it going to look like in the future? And we've seen Indigenous productions where a city has been transcended into a more green space with Lisa Jackson. And there's, I know that Zoe Hopkins also did some amazing work looking at some on the coast in British Columbia. And so when we look to the future, there are many, many possibilities, because we don't know what that is, but what we want to know is, will the future be good for us? Is this going to be a fun place? Because we won't be in the future. We're going to stay here. And those people that are way ahead of us will be able to see that. So in my language, there are 4 words for who we are as Syilx. And there are 4 kind of different dimensions of Syilx. And also within being Syilx, there are different worlds. There's the world that we live in, and then there's 3 worlds below us, and then there's 3 worlds above us. And so I want to talk about the worlds before us, and it wouldn't be called futurism. What would it be called? Because we're talking about a world that is way in the past. And we're talking about stories that have been passed down for from generation to generation, and then presented today. And so what is that ism? What is that world? And what are the possibilities of that? Because both of them are exciting, as well as the present. And so those are the things that I found really exciting when I started to think about the world of VR, because we're in this age of cultural technological communication. We have cell phones, we have software, there's a lot more access, as you saw with the IM4 Lab video. The accessibility and the possibilities are incredible. And I'm not going to say what our ethics and protocols should be. I think it should be a dialogue about the individual artists looking at, do you have a responsibility to bring forth stories of the past in the way that they're presented? Do you have the responsibility or permission to change a story? And if so, what are the ways that that would happen? We've seen this in the world of visual arts, where traditionally you look at Haida art, and we go to the Vancouver International Airport, and we see this phenomenal giant sculpture in a beautiful, I think it's marble. I'm not sure what the material is, but it's Bill Reed's work. And that comes from an oral story, and that comes from a tradition, and that comes from a law. And their laws are codified in their art. And so from my understanding from the late Dr. Greg Young-Ying, and I attended one of his presentations, was that Bill Reed did go to the community and say, I have a vision, and I want to be able to share Haida art and Haida work. And it's going to look different, but the message will be the same in terms of these giant sculptures utilizing different materials. And working with the community, he engaged in a process where he continued to do many great things, and he's no longer with us. So just thinking about the ways and the innovation and how can we contribute to those ethics that we may have, those questions that we may ask in presenting our work, and what are the methodologies, and what are the ways that we're able to engage that in our work, so that our work is accepted and is exciting for ourselves, our community, our nation, our world. You'll see here, I'm viewing my footage from my 360 footage, and I brought a knowledge keeper with me on my for my 360 film, because I really wanted to be careful when I was with those ancestors up in the mountains and we were talking about these old stories, that I was as accurate as I could be as possible. But also allowing myself to be really innovative and really, you know, what was shared with me is that, you know, in your heart what you're doing and what good you're doing, and you know, and you can feel it when something doesn't feel right. And so I'm not going to give any advice on what you should or shouldn't do. I'm just saying that those are, you know, some things to think about. And the last point is vision shape-shifting. So in our seal community, we have shapeshifters. We have Coyote that transformed himself into a little girl, into a woman, did all kinds of things that help, that bound our laws in terms of how we conduct ourselves in community. And, you know, is a very important teacher within within the framework of our cultural identity and thinking. And some of that shifting was for the good, and some not necessarily so. So we do know that shape-shifting is a part of our creativity in terms of myself as a silk artist. And so that's what I find really exciting with AR and VR, is the ability to imagine that and bring that to life with technology. Dimension. This is just following up with my last points about Chaptik. You'll see that there's a shadow, and the shadow is actually me on this giant ancestor, this rock. And so when I'm thinking about the story that I want to tell, I'm thinking about what world do I want to be in, and can I go back and forth in between those worlds, and how am I going to navigate them? And I think that's really exciting, because if you look at this old being, the rocks are the oldest beings on the earth right now, according to our Seal culture. They're the grandfathers and the grandmothers. And then there's my shadow sitting there saying, I have a story to tell. So the exciting possibilities of moving back and forth in between dimensions and being able to articulate those ideas, I think is really super, super exciting. Authenticity. You'll see in the middle picture, my huckleberry bush, and then there's also, like, you see the shadow on the bottom there, and I selected this image because you see grandma in the background there, and that's actually a 2D sculpture that was created, a paper sculpture from our fine arts program here in Penticton, Indigenous Fine Arts Program. And I thought about the metaphor of this is that there's a council of ancestors that are sitting around and watching what I'm doing. And then there's the grandmother in the back that I can always access within my blood and within my DNA. And so I think as long as I know as an artist that I'm staying true to those values within my systems, and also being brave enough to go outside of my comfort zone, I think things will be okay. And then this last image that you see, these are actually seeds that I collected from smukachen, which I think is known as arrowleaf root, the arrowleaf plant. And I thought this image was really important because of the possibilities of memory in terms of the stories that I want to tell of people that I know may not be here, people that I know have really important things to share, but they don't have access to be able to share those. And so what are the possibilities if we were to collect as many memories as we could and provide this seed bank of knowledge for the future for our communities? And that, to me, that's really, really exciting. So the last slide I'm calling Indigi Quests and Dreams. And what I mean by that is that we're in a digital world. And part of some of the things that I engage in is like, you know, like a cultural quest, like a vision quest into what am I willing to sacrifice when I'm telling stories that involve the truth, when I'm engaging in factual storytelling? Are there things that I know by talking to the, you know, the elders or community members that I know is hands off? If I'm told something is hands off, then do I listen? What am I willing to sacrifice in terms of what my community may think of my story and my nation? And as I said, this is my journey in terms of me as a storyteller. Each artist's journey is completely different, but that's the journey that I'm on right now. And how much time am I going to spend on this? That I put as the last topic, because it's probably going to be another 30 years. When I started documentary filmmaking, I didn't think that it would take me 30 years. I thought, you know, I'll just do this one doc and I'll tell this one story and then I'm done, because I'm never doing this again. It's too hard. The learning curve is too hard and I can't do it anymore. I can't go without sleep. I can't, you know, go without money just to tell this story. But 30 years later, you know, I'm ending up delving into another area that I know is going to be here for a long time. And I hope for our Indigenous communities that we're at the forefront. As Cease Weiss, our matriarch, was saying, that we're at the forefront of this medium because the possibilities are endless. And yeah, the last thing I want to say is limlimt, and limlimt in our language is, you know, I just really want to thank everybody for their time. Like I said, I was really nervous about doing this presentation because I was like, well, you know, what can I share that would be meaningful and important and would spur some really good dialogue and sessions. And so I hope that I hope I've done you well with my time, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen.
Great. Thank you, Tracey. So this leads us for some questions that any of you may have. I noticed there was a question in the chat box from Chris about asking what the next major project IM4 is working on. And I guess to kind of just talk about that, IM4 has multiple projects that we work on. We're kind of always working on production and then also keeping in mind our training opportunities. I think one major one that we have is we're collaborating with the Vancouver Mural Festival for their second year for the Winter Arts Festival, where we curate Indigenous artists to develop their own augmented reality pieces that would be displayed. So that's something that's coming up early next year. And then also the lab is exploring more in virtual production, which is real-time filmmaking. So that combines computer generated graphics, game engine, real-time rendering. So it's using virtual and augmented reality technologies, which is this new form of media production that is emerging. So those are some of the big ones that are coming, but we're always, you know, finding ways to collaborate with other organizations for panels and talks and training opportunities. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone, if you have other questions for Tracey, you can also put it in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can also unmute. Okay, so Erica asks, thank you, Tracy. This is wonderful. Are you going to expand the Huckleberry Project in the future?
Yes, I am. The Huckleberry Project is a long-term project. Currently, right now, I'm learning the different aspects of how I want to interface the many concepts of 360 immersive, the immersive experience, the AR experience, the gaming experience, and how I can build that. So the idea behind that is that I want to engage youth. I want to engage youth to become content creators and to be able to create content so that they can be self-employed because of the possibilities of AR and VR. So if I'm able to create something that is useful for our communities for language revitalization and also working with community, that's what I'm thinking about. One of my expertise is team building and being able to create a team and having all parts of that team work together. And so the VR Huckleberry project is a long-term project. Right now, I'm working with C. Weiss, and we created the Vaccinium Collective, and we're actually working with some artists in, I believe in Britain or in England. And we are working with them because they are really interested in vacciniums, which are berries. And so they reached out to us. And so this is definitely a long-term project. And I want to create this model so that an artist can be inspired and have a simple idea, something that they know, and turn it into something that they're excited about. And I really am excited about this project because I'm a berry picker and I really want to protect our berries, but I'm also an artist. And so there's many things that I'm thinking about in terms of a game and the different levels that you could reach based on some of the things that you experience within the game itself. That's super exciting for me, is the gaming part and different levels. Yeah.
Thanks. There's a couple of questions here that popped up. Are your 360 videos available on YouTube? I would love to see what they look like in Engage VR.
So currently the 360 video is in development. We just finished filming it last August, and the file. So here's the one thing that you should know about this is that data management is insane. And file management is insane because you're having to learn a new way of viewing the footage and stitching the footage together and whatnot. So like I said, I'm currently in development, and once we deploy it, I will be deploying it with the IM4 lab. So you'll be able to see it on the IM4 website. And so I'm super excited about that because the footage is phenomenal.
Great. And then another question we have, what has the response been from your community, including your elders, to experience the art in VR, AR, and 360?
Well, I actually did show it to an elder in our community, actually 3 elders. And I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? And this was the Unity and Tilt brush, just the prototype of the huckleberry bush. And the elder got very emotional and said, wow, this is really something that I think is really important and really cool. And they were actually talking about how they could, different ways that they could engage youth to go back to land-based learning, because the question that I always ask myself is, am I creating this artificial world where youth will never go back out on the land, where they will just see these beautiful images that are crisp and clear and animated? And the answer is it actually works in reverse, where you actually want to see the real thing and experience the real thing, which you cannot do with VR. You can do it with the filming part of it, which you can make it enticing, but it's a way of a connection and a pathway back to land-based learning. And for the elders, one of the things that was said was that when I can't go out berry picking anymore, when I can't leave my house, this is something that I would really, really like to watch and see and experience. It from the people that I took it to, and these people weren't just my family members, there was people that, one person was on council for our band and is an elder, and said, yeah, this is really, really something good that you're thinking about. So the response was good.
Nice. And then there's another one that came in. Is there a community of Indigenous artists in Tiltbrush? Well, I don't know, actually. I would believe so in Tiltbrush. It just, of course, brings to mind Casey Koizan, who's Indigenous artist who IM4 has collaborated a couple or a few times with the lab. But I would definitely recommend even kind of checking his work out if that interests you.
It's a small community because it's new technology, but it's growing exponentially. And I would say that there is an Indigenous community of artists in Tiltbrush that we don't know about. And I'm hoping through this dialogue that we can connect, because that's a super good idea to kind of bring that community together. And that's the vision of the IM4 Lab, is to create networking systems so that we can all work together to see our vision come to life.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, well, I think that seems like a lot of the questions that we have. So any last takers for Q&A, but it seems like we're kind of right on the dot of an hour, but thank you so much, Tracey, for sharing your talk and your project and your work. And it was really nice listening to you. And then also thank you for Algonquin and Luke for organizing this. We're so grateful to connect with everyone over out east as well. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps this up. And also for anyone who would like to kind of rewatch playback of this talk, you can search IM4 up on our YouTube channel, or go on YouTube and just search up IM4 Lab, and that's where you'll see this video.
Thank you to everybody for staying. That's amazing that you all stayed, and I'm hoping that you know, if I can do it, and I'm in my mid-50s, anybody can. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some VR content creators. Good luck to you all.
Okay, thank you everyone, and have a good evening.
Good night.